the biggest advice is make sure you're improving yourself first, because I mean, there's a really cool statistic out there that some of the most successful companies are started by 4-year-olds. People kind of in that age range. And why is that? Probably because they have all this professional experience that they have, where they know the opportunities, they know how to execute on things, they've made mistakes and learned off of other people's dollars, and now they can go do it for themselves.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups and 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com. Always happy to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Daniel Marsh. And as a quick introduction to Daniel, so in high school, he worked for his brother's landscaping company, and then in college dived into the world of entrepreneurship. And I think even did something with the BYU Entrepreneurship Club, and he can clue us in a little bit more about that. Started his first company, I think his sophomore year in school, sold it for a few $100s, not a huge amount, but did make a little bit off of it. Partners didn't want to keep going. Also got into an international business competition with his professor, graduated, nothing excited him. I went and got a job, I think at Epic, which is a hospital software, and moved over to another job, did that for about a year and a half, and then an opportunity came along to start his own business and building an operations platform, and been doing that ever since. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Daniel.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Excited to have you. So I just did a 30-second run through a much longer journey. So why don't you take us a bit back in time to where your journey got started with working for your brother's landscaping company?
Sure. And, I can start a little bit more with like the whole upbringing of, because obviously he's my brother, but, in my family, we had great examples, both my parents and my grandparents, that really put inside of us this idea of being creators and being able to shape the world around us, start our own things, own our own companies. And so my brother, he took to that a lot quicker than I did. Started his own landscaping company, I believe, when he was 14. And, that just opened the door of opportunities to a 12-year-old who wasn't even thinking about work, and jumped into that. And after a few years of doing that, he was able to accomplish much more. But it also planted that seed inside of me of, well, what can I start? And I got into entrepreneurship pretty heavily my sophomore year in college.
So one quick question, just to kind of dive into that. So after kind of growing up in that family environment, seeing your brother kind of do his own business, working for him, were you kind of going into college already wanting to do your own business, be an entrepreneur, or is that did it take you a couple of years in college to discover that?
So I always wanted to be, I guess you can call it, an owner of a business. And I had that from a very young age. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was, though, until maybe a little bit later into college. I mean, a little bit later in high school, and then early in college, when I really discovered the whole community around it.
So no, definitely makes sense. And I was probably a bit similar, at least, probably not quite to that level. I mean, I always thought it was, I kind of watched up as I was growing up, my dad was a bit of an entrepreneur, did several things, and always kind of intrigued me, but it was more towards for me, it was kind of to the end of when I got my engineering degree, that it kind of, when I hit that crossroads of what do I want to be when I grow up, so to speak, that really kind of hit it for me and drove home that that's at least in part the path I want to take, and continue to follow that part of the path. So now you're into, sophomore year of college. So what was the kind of the first business that you started that you sold up for a few $100s?
Sure. So the name of the company is Utah Bridal Makeup. And, just quick background on it. At this point in college, I'd already been involved with the Entrepreneurship Club at BYU for several months, both as a participating member and also starting to get involved more as a leader in this company, or this club. So at that point, I was already exposed to lots of different principles, such as business model validation and kind of these IDEO. That's a really great company that has a lot of great design methodologies that you can use and copy for your own personal designs. And so at this point, I was kind of, very confident in this, in the idea that, it doesn't matter what topic of business that we enter in, we can make it work. And so I had this classmate that was really interested in makeup. And she's like, I want to do something with makeup. And I was like, okay, I can work with this. And enter into the business model of Utah Bridal Makeup, where I really was interested in this area because, one, with weddings, there's no customer loyalty at all. You usually don't have a lot of repeat visitors, coming
Hopefully,
back.
you're almost in the business where you don't
Hopefully.
want repeat business, or at least not the same person. You want referrals, but not repeat business.
Exactly. So I thought, this is a great thing. How do these companies go about, finding clients? And a large portion of it was all done through bridal fairs. And so I looked at it and I was like, you know what, we can easily just get into this space, no problem. And we kind of set up this little ingenious model where we didn't actually have any cost outside of marketing to run and operate our business. We would get jobs and kind of farm them out to other more experienced and qualified individuals than myself to actually do the makeup on these brides. And for a first attempt at starting a company in a space that I had no experience in, it actually was pretty good, except the only big thing is about 3 or 4 months into it, the partners that I was working with weren't really interested in pursuing it. And this was kind of their first taste of entrepreneurship as well too. And so we made a simple exit by, finding an individual that was actually interested in doing this more of a lifestyle business, and we sold it to her.
Now, one question, just kind of to follow up on that. So you had your business partners, and you kind of mentioned that they got into it, and after a few months, it was just not desirable. Was that kind of that it wasn't a good working relationship with the business partners, or was it more of, hey, I don't want to be an entrepreneur, or I got too many demands on my time, or kind of what caused the decision to say, okay, and I know it's a compound question. I try to avoid those.
Sure.
But one follow-up question to that is, what made you decide, okay, because you could have kept going with it as well. So, you could have said, okay, I'll buy you guys out, or I'll keep going on my own. So kind of what was the process for them deciding to exit, and then what made you decide to exit along with them?
Sure. So where this started was, this actually started as a class project, and I was really gung-ho about taking the project and actually turning it into something real. And so I was a lot more interested in maybe making this long-term than I think some of these other classmates were. But to your part of your question, absolutely. Some of these partners were like, yep, I explored entrepreneurship and I realized it's not my thing. And so they didn't
and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I've done that. I work with a lot of startups and small businesses, and I think there's some people that they try it out and they're saying, this is just great, and I want to keep doing it, and it's fun and exciting. Now they're saying, well, I always thought it would be fun. Now I tried it out, and I'll go back to working for someone else because I don't like all the things that come along with it. So I definitely don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just interesting to see as people try it out, what their reactions are. So now now you said, okay, now to kind of follow up the second question, which is, it sounds like you were still excited about it, or at least you saw an interest in being an entrepreneurship. What made you decide to, rather than kind of take over or buy them out or continue on, to move on or go do something different?
Sure. And there's multiple reasons there. I actually really think the space is still, there's some really interesting software tools you can actually build in that space. And if I ever have, time on my hand, maybe I'll take that approach. But I think at that point in my life, I was a lot more interested in a lot of the other things that I started getting involved in. So I had a professor, his name was Nathan Furr, that I was working with, and he brought me on as one of his research assistants to start this competition called the International Business Model Competition, which was it doesn't sound like a big change from a business plan competition, but from a methodology and approach to how you go about actually establishing this business model, um, or this idea for a business, it's very nuanced and different. It's a different approach entirely than conventional business plans. And so I had an opportunity to work with him and start building this competition. And that was something that was really exciting to me. And we were just at the very ground floor of building this makeup company, which in my mind was more of a lifestyle business than a scalable startup. And so all in all, it wasn't like I'm running away, I don't want to be an entrepreneur, but rather like I have other opportunities that excite me way more.
And I think that, just to dive in again, but I think that that's where a lot of times, I think that that's where a lot of journeys start for entrepreneurs. Is initially the idea of a business is exciting. You're saying, well, I don't care what the business is. It's just fun to do your own business and to get it done. And, it's worthwhile. And then as you get farther in, you're saying, well, in addition to just running a business or the business idea, I really want to have a business that I get passionate, excited about. And that's kind of something that excites me more, which kind of sounds like your journey. And even a bit of mine, as earlier on, some of the businesses I did that are still around were ones that I was excited more about the opportunity or doing the business and doing my startup than it was about the actual business. And as I've got later on, I said, if I can find the mixture of both, then it makes for a much longer term viable business.
100% agreed. Yep.
So now you enter in with the professor, do the business competition, the business competition, or do that. And then kind of where did your journey pick up from there?
Well, so actually I spent a couple years working on that competition with him. So, and we expanded it to several universities. The third year, which was my final year, we had Harvard University co-host this with us. And I spent a lot of time mentoring other entrepreneurs on the concepts of business model validation, and really had the opportunity to see lots of very talented student entrepreneurs take problems, not only problems that they had, but problems that they had to discover, and create these elegant solutions through very simple tests that and a lot of times didn't cost any money, but just costed effort and time. And so for about 3 years of just kind of being involved and seeing all these entrepreneurs do these come up with these amazing business models, it really helped me to refine the creative process and methodologies of how to build successful startup.
No, I think that, that's a great place to learn. And I think and a great place to kind of figure out how to do entrepreneurship and startups. I think it's interesting, a lot of people go get an MBA or get an entrepreneurship degree or something in business related. And yet you'll go through your whole, whether it's either undergraduate or graduate school, never actually starting or trying your own business or doing anything even in that field other than just getting the degree. And, what better time to start something and try it and fail if you're going to fail while you're in school, while you don't have the financial pressures, while you're still learning and also applying what you're learning. And I think that's awesome. That kind of is the route that you took, that hey, you started a business, you did a business competition, you're doing things outside of school, both to make sure you like it, but also to apply what you're learning and to reinforce it. So now you're coming out of school and, I think you mentioned that you just wasn't anything that excited you, or there wasn't anything that you could really hit on that, that you wanted to move forward on. Is that right?
So, yeah, so I was still in the process of exploring different business concepts, and always had it as kind of the dream of mine to be building my own company. But by the time I hit graduation, I just did not have an opportunity or pain that I wanted to solve, to the point that I was willing to forego the opportune cost of actually having a job. And so I picked up a job in software. I was actually earlier this year looking into doing something with medical software from a startup standpoint, but didn't arrive to anything that was really concrete. So I thought it was really fitting to go and get a job at a medical software company to kind of see what I was going to miss out on and how complicated the endeavor that I was actually about to try to tackle from an entrepreneurship standpoint was. well, now I'm going to go learn this from you know, a company that's been in the business for 30 plus years.
Mm.
So I thought that was a really cool experiment to go do.
So now, and I agree, and I think that is always hard. Sometimes you have a very big passion, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to do your own thing, but you can't come up with that. The timing isn't right, or you just can't come up with that idea. And so, I like the idea that the kind of the next best thing is, well, I know I want to be in this area, I want to do something, and I think this is an interesting or exciting area. Until I have my own idea, until I have something that I can latch onto, do the next best thing, which is go get experience from other people in that area, so that you're all the more prepared for when you do have that kind of idea, or that timing makes sense for the entrepreneur, the entrepreneur endeavor. So you go work for that business for a period of time, and then kind of where did it go from there? How did it continue to proceed as you were working for that business?
Yeah, so I learned a lot at Epic. They offer a really strong product for hospitals, and after working there for 2 years, it's just that entrepreneurship bug kept poking its head back out, and I was like, you know what, I need to go work at a smaller company or start my own thing. I had reached out to one of my earlier contacts back at BYU, kind of exploring if there was any interesting startups in the area that I should approach. And he actually on the spot offered me a job saying, I'm starting my own thing right now. So I came out,
That's
left
kind
my
of
job.
fortuitous. I am looking for something in this area, this entrepreneur, there's a startup. Let me know if you have an idea. Oh, I'm doing my own. Why don't you just come join me? Sounds great.
It was, yeah, definitely something that you can consider maybe a little bit of divine providence there. So I jumped out over here in Utah. We spent a couple years. I spent a couple years working at that company, and honestly learned a ton at that company. But again, I feel like journeys sometimes, they're stepping stones, they're building blocks, and even though it's right for you at that moment, it's not always going to stay right for you. And so I only worked for that company for about another 2 years in my professional career before moving on to my final company that I worked at before starting the company I'm working at now. And it's really interesting. Each company I worked at, I learned a very important skill that has prepared me for what I'm doing right now.
So now one question, just because you kind of jumped over just a bit, so to rewind. So you go work for the friend, it's the fun startup, and then you say now, you kind of jump to what you're doing now. What necessitated that jump, or kind of how did you make that, what caused that transition?
Transition from my professional life to startup, or from company 2 to 3? Which one are you asking about?
We'll go with all the above. No, we'll go with company 2 to 3.
So company 2 to 3, well, the interesting thing there is I made a really cool transition from company 1 to 2, where I was working at a software company into a new software company that was much smaller, and I got to start working in the role that I really wanted, which was product. I really like product design, product management. And the company there was growing in a way that no longer really matched my professional ambitions. And so I think it's really important to be true to yourself, and you can sacrifice a little bit for companies, but if you're actually going to sacrifice your professional ambitions for a company, that's kind of when it's like, well, maybe there's better opportunities out there for me. And so that's where I left my second company, moving to the third company. And the cool thing about the second company is I did product management, and the third company I did product design, which is kind of the opposite side of the same coin. And so when you look at everything that I've done, I've actually touched, I would probably say maybe 75 to 80% of positions you could have at a software company in some facet or another. But everything that I've done is focused on product.
No, I think that sounds like an awesome and exciting journey. So definitely, this sounds like a fun time. So now that brings us a bit, a bit to where you're at today, or kind of brings us towards the present. But now looking towards the future, you take the next 6 to 12 months. Kind of where do you see things headed? What's in store for you, and what's next for you?
Sure. So the cool thing about where we're at right now is we've already spent about a year. The team and I have worked about about a year to start building this product, and we have a few solid beta clients that are giving us feedback on it, and we're trying to really, so going back to my business model competition days, we're trying to nail this product and then go out and scale it because the opportunities are out there. And so we're taking our few beta clients right now, really refining the system, make sure it works perfect for them. And once we get it to where they give us like 10 out of 10 review, this is awesome, then we're going to open up the floodgates. So next 6 months, I project us going to market outside of our beta clients.
Well, that sounds like it'll be an exciting, it's next several months. And, it's always interesting as you move out of beta and you bring on clients. First of all, it's interesting to move it, or fun to move in beta to actually see something working, or at least reasonably working. And then usually you learn a few things in beta about what doesn't work. But then even more so once you bring it out of beta and you're saying, okay, it's out in the market. Now we have to see, first of all, we have to figure out, so we got to sell this thing. We have to get people to buy it. But it's fun when you do start to get that clients, and when you actually say, hey, people do like it, they are willing to accept it, they are willing to use it, and they're willing to pay us for it. And we're not just burning money and getting putting blood, sweat, and tears into it, but we're actually making our money off of it. Is always a fun time. So I think that'll be an exciting time for you. So
yeah.
Well, now as we've kind of now brought us to the present, looked a bit into the future, we've reached that point in the podcast where I always have 2 questions towards the end of the podcast, and we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
I was doing very well at not remembering this for years. And then you
press those memories down. You don't want to remember the mistake.
Yeah. So senior year in college, right before I graduate, probably about the semester before it's the year before I graduate. So it's the first semester, I have an opportunity to at least explore founding this company called Owlet with
you might have heard of it. It's a reasonably big company in Utah.
I think they're valued at about $1 billion right now.
Exactly.
So that one, looking back on, hurts just a little bit every time I think about it, because I remember the guy who initially started it, his name is Jacob, pitching the idea to me. And I just remember listening to it. I'm just like, nah, I don't want to do anything with babies. And I look at it as, and actually I'll kind of tie this in a little bit to your next question. But I look at it, and what I've really learned from it is that you can't always just discount something that you don't understand. You always have to come to things with open minds. And when somebody who has different experience or knowledge than you comes to you with maybe this idea, chances are there's a lot that they don't, there's a lot that you don't know that they have as a background. And so you should take the time, learn what you can from them, and really make a decision that's not based on your gut instinct initially all the time.
No, and I think that's a great piece of advice. But it's also one where you do always kind of, well, does that make sense to me? Do I think it's a good opportunity? Because sometimes it's not a good opportunity, but I think it does, rather than always just basing on that knee-jerk reaction. If somebody's excited about it, if they put in a lot of effort and time to develop it, at least give it, a good look into and see if you're overlooking something, or why are they excited about it and why it makes sense. And I talked about it on previous episodes. One of my favorite shows I love to watch, and I think I've watched almost, if not all the episodes, pretty close to it, was Shark Tank. And those, and whether or not it's completely founded in reality, that it's still fun to watch and see all the different businesses. But one of the ones that they passed on was Ring Doorbells, which is now a multi-billion-dollar business, and is grown and taken off. And it's kind of the same thing. They didn't get it. They didn't take the time. And I think that they passed on to what is obviously a good opportunity. And so I think that, I think that's a great lesson learned, is that, and a mistake made of, hey, first of all, you could have been a part of a multi-billion-dollar business, but even more so, learning from that mistake as you're moving forward. I'll still ask my second question, and maybe you can build on that, which Absolutely. Is, if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Sure. No, and this is this is something that I think I can kind of break up into both for like aspiring entrepreneurs and then also entrepreneurs. But my mantra personally is aspire to greatness. And kind of how I use that to direct my life is that I have very high expectations of myself. I'm constantly looking to improve myself and also growing in skills and knowledge as I go forward in life. Well, when we look at the problems that entrepreneurs are going to be solving this day, a lot of the easy stuff is already being serviced. But what isn't being serviced are things that are either difficult to execute on or problems that require a specific skill set or specific knowledge to be built, to even know what you're supposed to be building. And so the last 3 jobs that I had before starting this company have been real testament to showing that you can develop a very solid skill set in something and become very valuable to teams, to other individuals, other entrepreneurs, potential partners, and then complement each other extremely well. And so the biggest advice is make sure you're improving yourself first, because I mean, there's a really cool statistic out there that some of the most successful companies are started by 4-year-olds. You know, people kind of in that age range. And why is that? Probably because they have all this professional experience that they have, where they know the opportunities, they know how to execute on things, they've made mistakes and learned off of other people's dollars, and now they can go do it for themselves.
I love that. And I think that is absolutely great piece of advice and definitely something people should take to heart. Well, as we now wrap up the podcast, if people want to reach out to you, they want to, now that you're moving out of beta test, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to, contact you, or find out more?
Sure. So our website has a way to contact us. Our website is xenonchecks.com. And alternatively, you can reach out to me directly at Danny, that's DANNY, at xenonchecks.com.
Well, I definitely encourage people to check out the website and reach out to Danny as makes sense for him, and to get some great words of wisdom and or use the software. So, well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, feel free to go to inventiveguest.com and apply to be on the show. 2 more things as a listener. 1, make sure to click subscribe in your podcast player so you know when all of our awesome episodes come out. And 2, leave us a review so everybody else can find out about all of our awesome episodes. Last but not least, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else in the business, just go to strategymeeting.com and grab some time with us to chat. Thank you again, Danny or Daniel, whichever you go by, or whichever you prefer, for being on the podcast. It's been a fun, it's been a pleasure, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin.